Good day, Underdog Leadership Podcast listeners. Jenny Mitchell here with another episode. For the love of God, will you please lead? What am I talking about today? This is a podcast about all the ways you might be delaying making decisions in your life and work. I'm going to specifically kind of dive into this role of number 2 to number 1, or if you're a number 1, how you can invite your number 2s to have more decisions and embody and embrace those decisions as they go along. So let me set the tone here first off. This is something I have been observing in women's leadership spaces. We don't have a lot of paradigms for, or a lot of role models for compassionate and bold and ambitious leadership. So not the masculine sort of aggressive, rough around the edges, get her done leadership, but this sort of those components, but with a compassionate heart in mind. And I've been playing with this idea of we have a leadership vacuum. When we aren't clear as women in that leadership space, we create our own problems. Who's in charge? People start to feel unsafe because they don't know what's going on, when it's going on, and who's expected to do what. And that final thought, that what is expected of them. So this podcast is going to be all around like ideas or triggers for you to notice when you might be unanticipatedly creating a leadership vacuum. So let's back up a minute and talk for a second about decisions and decision making. This is the cornerstone, and having consensus is the cornerstone of getting shit done at work, right? That also works for at home, but let's focus on the workplace for a minute here. And so you as a leader may be delaying making a decision because you're worried it's not the right decision. And that's a typical thing for women, right? We want to get things right. So if we can't see the perfect decision, we just delay. And often we worry about making bad decisions, which bad decisions have a lot of fear around them and a lot of paralysis around them. And so the outcome is that we do nothing. We avoid, we delay. In my world, it looks like procrastination. I promised you on episode 1 that I was going to walk alongside you through these things. And so don't doubt for a minute that some of my conversations in this podcast are from my midnight musings, from my in bed thinking about the things that I do all day. We move from a place of fear, and so we do nothing. And what happens is the people around us get worried, and they start to feel unsafe and unsure because now they're not sure exactly what they're doing. There are some ways to get through this, and maybe that's step 1 of a learning for this podcast. Obviously, I'm going to say notice when you're delaying making decisions. Also, try and give yourself a little bit of flexibility on that. I think we get stuck in this black and white theory, this black and white thinking there's a right decision and there's a wrong decision. I know I've certainly gotten caught in that. And maybe we need to think about that there's a decision for now, a decision to allow us to move forward. We call it a pilot project. We have no way of knowing what's coming down the pipeline. We build frameworks and things like strategic plans or business models, but we can't exactly know everything that's going to happen in the future. So can we live with the decision for now? I think is a great sort of litmus test for us as we're going through. Let's remember too that as leaders, it's our job to provide the clarity. So when we get into a place where things are not clear, so let's just back this up a little bit more. We want to create workspaces where everyone is heard. We want to create workspaces where all voices are, get ready, seen, heard, and valued. Thank you, Brené Brown. And we want to lead collaboratively because the new model, new paradigm for us, as I talk about in the book, Embracing Ambition, is that we are just hardwired to be more collaborative. It's the way we think. But sometimes that can be misconstrued. And that's why I talk about this, for gosh sakes, would you please lead? Consensus, building connections and conversations and dialogue and discussions are all incredibly important to all of us, not just women. But at the end of the day, you have to, as a leader, make a decision to move forward. If there's consensus, that's wonderful. We're delighted and we all agree. But if there is not consensus, we still have to move forward. And it is your job, it's what you're paid for, to lead at that moment and make a decision. And let the rest of the team know that that's the way we're going, and you expect them to hop on the bandwagon. So one of the things I see from a toxic perspective in the workplace is when people say one thing inside the room and say, yeah, sure, we're going ahead with this. And outside the room, it starts to sound like, I told you this would never work. I told you this is going to work. This is a stupid decision, la, la, la. That's tied to culture and that's tied to respect. And so if that is happening, you as the leader are responsible for that. So do not confuse or conflate collaboration with consensus. You need both. All right. So we've talked about making decisions for now. We've talked about the difference between collaboration and consensus. I also want to strongly put the responsibility on you that you are the one that must be clear. So we hope that staff and employees will be clear, and we hope they will tell us what they want and with an open heart and an open mind in a trusting way. But it is actually on you, the leader, to be clear about what is going to happen next. So you give a disservice to your staff if you are unclear. You need to give them a destination or a future state that you desire and let them find their way to it. But describe for them what you're expecting, maybe give them milestones, show them what it will feel like or be like when they've been successful. This is obviously totally individualized to the person you're working with, right? As a number one, you're trying to figure out from your number twos what you're going to get from them and how they like to be worked with. I know for me, I like lots of space. So you're going to give me the end destination. I'm a 7, right? In the Enneagram. You're going to give me an end destination. You're going to tell me what it's going to be like. And you're going to say, Jenny, go figure it out and go have fun and tell me about the journey. And I'm going to do that. For some people, that would be freaking scary. For some people, they like to know all the steps and know all the markers. And I know for myself, it's a lot easier for me to manage people that are like me than it is to manage people that are different. But that's my job as a leader, is to adapt and become that chameleon to meet the needs of those number twos, not box them in when they don't want to be micromanaged, and also give them the space and challenge them as a leader. So we talked about making the right decision. We talked about that concept of leadership vacuum. Is there vagueness in the daily life or what's expected of people? That's a fantastic way for people to not achieve objectives, go sideways, start not showing up for work, or in accusing other people of doing things. It's not my style to talk about toxic workplaces. It's not my style to talk about sort of the negative pieces. But what I do want to do on this podcast is accept the fact that that is part of the reality of how we create our cultures. What you tolerate is what becomes your culture. Ooh, scary, eh? What you tolerate is your culture, not what you strive to. And so it is on us as leaders to nip and address those things in the bud right away, right? So now let's talk about what's hard about that, especially in workplaces that can be all women. They can be very competitive. They can be very backstabbing. You can often find women jockeying for position within the pecking order of the organization. I just hate even saying this because that's not my style as a woman. It's not the kind of environment I want to live in or the kind of environment I want to embody. But I have been around this earth enough times to know that that is one of the realities of some organizations. If you're interested in why women tend to build out this pecking order to leadership, it's very much tied to the patriarchy. And I would drive you to a great book that I read called Cassandra Speaks. When women are included in the stories that are told about them, the stories change. A fascinating read about why this happens and what a disservice it is for women until we notice that it's going on. And this passive aggressive behavior really speaks to that idea of they say one thing in the room and then when they leave, there's something else completely said. This also talks a little bit to personal power and the fact that when you show up at work, you are responsible for you. We're now talking more about psychological safety. We're talking more about solid, healthy boundaries for all of us, not just for the benefit of the employees, but for the benefit of the organization and the organization's mission. And passive aggressive behavior can be very difficult and harmful. I mean, I'm not telling you anything else new. What I'm inviting is you to think about it in a different way, that if you knew how incredibly harmful it was, wouldn't it behoove you as a leader to address it sooner than later? So, all of this is prefaced on the concept of trust, that you need to have the ability in your workplace to speak freely and own your concerns. Some people call that psychological safety. I'd also just like to say you want to feel safe to say what you think without the risk of losing your job. I don't know any leader who wants a table of yes ma'ams, but conflict has been so well, our society doesn't do well with conflict, healthy conflict, where you express opinions, where you are shared what you think, what you don't think. And this is hard to execute in reality. And so practicing conflict is important for teams. And saying the hard things is going to become more and more important as time becomes more and more valuable. We're not going to have the time in the world to kind of yes ma'am our way and then go through a whole project cycle and then have something crash and burn and do a debrief on it and realize that we knew about this way back when, but nobody was willing to say anything about it. So let's dive into saying the hard things. There's a great book. I'm trying to think of her name. Oh, she has the best book on this. Courageous Conversations. And it's a fantastic book, and it gives a bit of a framework around how to say hard things. Let's take a minute to look at the psychology behind it. Why don't we say the hard things? Because we don't want to hurt people's feelings. And we don't say the things that need to be said in the moment. We want to be nice, but we don't want to be kind. Let me explain. Being nice is kind of going over something, sort of smoothing over something, kind of going over the top of it, not really getting to the heart of it. But being kind is about telling something to someone in the hope and the intention that it will make an impression on them and help them see something differently. For those of us as women that were raised as people pleasers, for those of us as women who were raised to not rock the boat, I include myself in the bucket there. It is a lifelong journey to practice being direct and to make sure that listen to my voice, I'm even articulating clearer, making sure it's understood by all, and there are clear consequences. So why do we like to be liked? Being liked has been how women traditionally have used our influence, right? So we came alongside someone, we befriended them. There's terms for this in human evolution, which I am blanking on right now. You can read about them. But that tend and befriend so that they become likable to you and they trust you is how we have survived in the past. And I don't use the word survived lightly. When you don't have a heavy stick to wield, let me use an example of a big body or a fear-based, toe the line from a fear-based approach versus an aspirational-based approach, which is what we're talking about here. We don't have a lot of models for this. Models for compassionate yet ambitious leadership styles. And so these masculine leadership styles, at least for me, don't align. And so I find myself seeking ways of letting people know that I mean business, letting people know that I'm serious, that I have a plan, and that I expect them to meet me with that plan. So my invitation to you today, dear listeners, dear Underdog Leadership Podcast listeners, those people that understand moving from number 2 to number 1 really changes a lot of your behaviors and your approaches to work. This is a cornerstone. You must invite courageous conversations where you can be clear and compassionate. And you must get comfortable about being direct, but open about feedback. So that means, I love Brene Brown's quote, you must be able to sit on the same side of the table as people in order to give and receive feedback. So in other words, if you are going to provide feedback for someone on your leadership team, you must be open to receiving feedback on this topic or other topics at the time. Why is this so hard? I think there's a lot of fear. I think we worry that the relationship can't take it, that the relationship will sour. And here's the paradigm, you guys. What if we trusted that the relationship could take it? What if we trusted that by offering this feedback, the relationship could actually be made stronger by it? And trusting that you can handle saying the things that need to be said, and they can handle hearing the things that need to be said. If I don't know what, healthy boundaries are, I don't know what is. That to me is the way I want to work with others. So people, in my experience, generally want to know what's expected of them. And most people I know want to do a good job. At least the people that I work with want to do a good job. So how about we gain the courage and confidence to let them do a better job by offering advice and making suggestions? And our job as leaders is to continually cast a vision of excellence for them to aspire to. And of course, noticing when they do achieve it. So our job is to show what we're expecting, what we can be together. Do you hear that collaborative language, even the way I describe it, right? It's not an it language, it's a we language. That's partly my style, but I also find it's a very familiar style for inspiring women to move forward with you. And again, that idea of what you tolerate becomes your culture. So be mindful of what you're letting pass and what you're kind of sloughing off. So we reached the end of this podcast, and I want to leave you with a coaching question. Is there a place in your life or work that is requiring more of you? Is there a place where you need to step out, be seen, and lead? Ironically, that question is in the title of my upcoming book entitled Embracing Ambition, Empowering Women to Step Out, Be Seen, and Lead. And that last little word, lead, at the end, can you see how this ties back to the beginning of the episode? For God's sakes, get up there and lead. Get into the ring, engage, make mistakes, learn. Stop beating yourself up about all this stuff and get in there and get the experience you need. Because I can tell you one thing, having worked with hundreds of women executives, the boardroom tables, the not-for-profit room tables, the employees out there, they need your voice. They are craving your voice. And every time you stop yourself from saying something or stop yourself from trying something, just because it looks uncomfortable or hard, you are only reinforcing those stereotypes that have existed for so long. The workplace needs these ambitious and compassionate women leaders just like you. If you would like to be a part of this movement, I'm feeling as I'm talking, I'm like, wow, I feel strongly about this. We need more women. We need more role models. Yes, we need to have them in leadership positions, but we also need to start talking about this style of leadership so that we can start articulating it and executing on it. You will find information about this, so much more, inside the book called Embracing Ambition. It's based on 5 pillars of the research by Megan Rayboyne. And I will actually share the pillars here because I think they're actually such great anchors and hopefully will help you think about how you're leading in your offices right now. Perception barriers. So the way you're perceived from outside, or the way you perceive yourself. Oh my God, I have to do a podcast on that one because it starts with you, how you perceive yourself and what you expect for yourself and others. Embodied roles. That's that blurred line between your leadership and the people you're leading. And the minute that gets all blurred together, if you over-identify with the people you're leading with, it can cause all sorts of challenges and problems. Embracing challenge. I mean, that's just a standard that women who end up in leadership positions or who are more fulfilled in life. I must say, I have become so much more fulfilled in life now that I'm going for things and I'm trying things. They tend to take on projects they know nothing about that they want to learn about. And that takes a serious amount of courage and giving yourself a nice wide rope to try things and to fail. The 4th pillar is, of course, glass cliff assignments. Women tend to get hired into positions that are near to impossible. But that's actually not the story. The story is that they turn them around or find a way to make them work through sheer determination and diligence. Is that fair? No. We could talk more about that. But I think it really speaks to, it's not the situation, it's what you make of the situation that matters. And finally, the 5th pillar is visionary. Women who aspire to more, cast a vision, create a vision, spend time with themselves, imagining how the world could be if they were allowed permission to lead. And then they create that world for the people around them. They are naturally visionary, and they can put those steps, or those, what's the word? Those, kernels together. I heard this really neat expression the other day, that projects are just like little circles on a page until a leader creates a bridge and a thread and an arc and a narrative to them. And oh my God, the visual of that was just so beautiful. I thought I would share that on the podcast here today. So that is your job as a leader, right? And a word out there for those of you as number ones who are bringing along number twos. You know, mentorship is a really important conversation for me. One of my co-colleagues at Chavender, Sherry Schaefer, does a lot of work helping organizations build mentorship programs, mentorship packages. It's more than consulting. It's like how to build and lead your organization from within. The corporate knowledge that's available through mentorship is so powerful. But this idea of mentorship, if you're a number one helping a number two along the way, where can you give them permission to lead? Where can you give them instances where you give them a nice long rope, a really juicy project, and you say, I trust you. If you have questions, come back to me, but really kind of give them that future state. I know in the military, they talk about, I forget the term. It's like mission, future mission. You describe the way you want it. I want you to land in country X. I want you to establish a base of this many people. I want you to make sure that this, and this is available. Now go. Figure it out on your own. I'm available for you. That is how we are going to grow and expand this kind of compassionate and ambitious leadership for the benefit of my generation, but also the next generation and the next generation after us. And we have to let go of needing to be liked. We have to start getting comfortable talking about difficult things, getting comfortable and feeling safe when those situations arise, so that we can all learn from them. Coaching question: where in your life are you going to lead with more intention? A place where you can step out, be seen, and lead. Thanks so much for joining me on the podcast, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one.